Hi, welcome to my channel and good evening. Today I want to continue talking about what is arguably the most important thing in a story, the setup. What does our story have so far? We have an interesting character in an unusual situation who wants something he can't have. Or at least, many things stand in the way of the hero getting what he or she wants. For example, Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark wanted a particular golden idol. This wasn't an impossible goal, it just turned out to be unattainable. Of course, that wasn't the hero's main goal, although Jones didn't succeed in getting that one either. I don't care, it's still one of my favorite action-adventure movies. Often, this resistance toward the hero getting what they want or need takes the form of a rule. For example, in The Matrix, the rule could be stated broadly as follows: conform. The rule is to follow the rules. Get to work on time. Don't sell illegal programs on the underground market. I would argue that one way of stating the rule in Raiders of the Lost Ark is the following: do not fight against corruption. Or, another more specific way of saying basically the same thing, do things Rennie Belrog's way. This rule will matter, both to the hero and to the audience, because of what the hero wants, as well as the forces that are pushing back against the hero's goals and desires. For example, in The Matrix, the rule, don't show up for work late or you're fired, is significant to Neo because he needs a job. On the other hand, the rule, don't waste time, while a perfectly good rule, isn't relevant to the hero, because that particular rule has little bearing on whether Neo can get what he wants. In a sense, the rule I'm talking about is included in the hero's goal. It has to do with his desires, and whichever forces oppose him. I think that what I'm calling the rule is just an attempt to explicitly articulate the force or forces pushing back. You could think of it this way. If you're wondering if your opening is strong enough, you can ask yourself, what is the rule? What specific force or forces are keeping the hero from achieving what they desire? By the way, you might be wondering what all this has to do with Carl Jung and his idea of the hero. Let me put it this way. In the beginning, when you were first born, you were unconscious in the sense that you didn't have a cognitive grasp of the world. Although you could and did physically experience it, you hadn't yet established a sophisticated cognitive model of it. You experienced pain and pleasure, but as yet, you had no grasp of those concepts. In the story of Adam and Eve, when they break the rule, do not eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they become conscious and, therefore, aware of their nakedness, their vulnerability, as well as the vulnerability of others. In Jungian terms, they wake from their slumber with the Great Mother and enter into the world of opposites. In a very real way, the prohibition in the garden, do not eat of the fruit, was a rule meant to be broken, for if it had been obeyed, we would still lie unconscious in paradise. Here are a few examples of what I mean. First, let's think about the movie The Thing, the one made in 1982 by John Carpenter. In that movie, when the United States research team finds that the Norwegian research team has been killed, wiped out, massacred, they try to radio for help. In The Thing, as in so many horror movies, the heroes want to save both themselves and the world. The force pushing back on them is from the horror, from the nightmare. So the rule is, give up and let us control you and kill you and use you for our own purposes. This rule is never explicitly articulated, but it is understood. It is communicated and clearly communicated by the entity's behavior. It wants to assimilate the hero and his allies and take over the world. There is an element of true nobility in the hero's fight against the alien, because they're not just fighting to save themselves, they're fighting to save all humankind. Now let's look at one of my favorite horror movies of all time, The Cabin in the Woods. Let's say that Dana, the college student who had her heart broken by her philandering college professor, is the hero. In this case, what does Dana want? Well, to have fun, to have a carefree weekend with her friends before going back to school. What is the opposing force? Well, I guess fate and the will of the ancients. Someone from the Institute has offered Kurt the use of his cabin. This is a ruse, of course, because the people at the Institute want to sacrifice Kurt and his friends to the old gods in order to fulfill their contractual obligations and save the world from destruction. So I guess here the rule would be, allow yourselves to become the sacrifice to the old gods for the good of humankind. Now let's look at Peter Pan. Wendy and the boys don't want to grow up. The rule? All children must grow up. That's very simple. The rule is very clear and universal. Children must grow into adults, and that forms the basis of the movie. Pinocchio is very similar. The Blue Fairy clearly states the rule at the beginning of the movie. Be a good boy, and always let your conscience be your guide. It is understood that if he does this, Pinocchio will achieve his heart's desire and become a real boy. I'm only going to go over one more example, the 1999 version of The Mummy. I think that the most active character in The Mummy was Rick O'Connell, but even though I love the character of Rick O'Connell, since he is only involved in the quest because Evelyn, the girl who saved his life, is in the quest, I view Evelyn as the hero. So what does Evelyn want? She wants to gain real-world experience so she can join the prestigious ranks of the Bembridge Scholars. That, and she wants to be an adventurer like her mother and father. So what's the rule? How is society pushing back on her? I think it's something like this. If you go to Hymenoptera, you will never return. There is a secret order committed to keeping Hymenoptera a secret. Also, Benny warns O'Connell in a nasty and condescending way not to go to Hymenoptera. In a way, this rule, this warning, is a kind of harbinger. For instance, it is like the gas station attendant who warns the crazy college kids or lost families not to go into them hills because whatever goes there isn't going to come back. So I'm curious, what do you think of this? Does a story always have a rule or a prohibition? Can you think of one that doesn't? What about your work in progress? What rule have you used? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. If you consider this time well wasted, please think about liking and subscribing. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, good writing.